Welcome to SCBWI Carolina's Book Fairies First Look. I'm your host, Micki Bare. With me today is award-winning picture book author Kelly Rice Schmitt. Kelly writes for curious kids of all ages. She loves getting small humans excited about big ideas like energy. A former energy trader, Kelly has helped fuel countless homes, schools, and businesses. Like this book's narrator, Kelly has visited oil refineries, chemistry labs, rail yards, and more. But the closest she's come to dwelling with dinosaurs is living with her dino-loving husband and children in North Carolina. Her award-winning debut picture book, I Ship, was named a Science Friday 2023 Best STEM Book for Kids, and the follow-up, I Fuel, received a Junior Library Guild Gold Standard Award. Welcome, Kelly. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love that we do this in SCBWI Carolinas. It's a great program. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, we love introducing books this way. It's really cool. So before we begin today, let me give everyone some details about the follow-up to I Ship, the recently released I Fuel. We're mighty fuel, ready to power the world. From light bulbs and stoves to cars and planes, many things around us need fuel to work. Where does that fuel come from? Follow oil on its journey from the time of the dinosaurs to the bottom of the ocean floor, through drilling machines and oil refineries, and right into our homes and vehicles. Discover oil's power and problems, and find out how the sun, wind, and water are providing cleaner forms of energy. Engaging text, bright illustrations, and approachable science explore why fuel matters, how it got here, and where it's going next. Kelly, this is such a timely, informative book, and I love that it's STEAM focused. What was your inspiration for iFuel?
So, as you mentioned in my bio, I have worked for a long time in the energy industry. And as I started writing at the same time, it was kind of always in the back of my mind that this really is a cool topic for kids. And as I had my own children, there weren't really any books for younger readers that weren't kind of the 90s dry fiction or nonfiction, excuse me, that kind of just like, here's a picture of an oil rig and here's a picture of a barrel of oil. And so over time, you always hear write what you know as authors. And so I felt that this was a book that was kind of mine to write. And I was actually at one of the national SCBWI conferences when I first started writing because I lived near New York City at the time. And I remember they would ask you if you had another career. And Lynn Oliver at the time listed out all these people with interesting other careers, and I was one of them. And she said, hey, these are interesting topics of other things you do. These are careers I haven't even heard of. Think about it. How can you write about this for kids? And so that was always kind of in the back of my mind.
That is really a neat pathway to kind of follow. And that is, I'm really glad they brought that out. So this, like you said, it kind of relies on subject matter that you already know, and it also relies on research. What was your research process like for this writing project?
Yeah, so it's interesting because a lot of times as nonfiction authors, we write about things that we already do know a lot about, but we don't know everything. And the breadth of the energy industry is pretty wide. It's huge. So most of what I focused on was kind of what they call downstream. So after it's out of the refinery, which is a part of this book, and all the parts after that, getting it to and from places, getting it to people. So the whole beginning process of this book, which, as you mentioned, starts way back hundreds of millions of years ago in the prehistoric era. Most of it formed in the Mesozoic era. I didn't know as much about that, but I actually had an old boss, a colleague of mine, who was a petroleum geologist by trade and then later worked as a trader in the crude oil space. And so I reached out to him, and he was just an amazing wealth of knowledge. So, in addition to books, I really leaned on him. He read the manuscript, he helped me. And believe it or not, he actually had so many critiques of the art. This book has a lot of geology in it as well for how oil forms. So, oil is also called petroleum, which actually means rock oil. So, it has a lot to do with geology too, which was something I didn't know quite as much about. So, it was really cool to almost collaborate with him in that way and to just learn even more about something that I already knew about. So it's always fun researching.
And so, and you've actually made a science topic relatable and engaging for young emergent readers. Why do you write for children?
So, part of this book in particular, but all my books is I just think that kids are so smart, even when they're really young, and they're so capable. And I think that sometimes some adults, not all adults, can really not give them the credit that they're due for what they're capable of understanding. So, there all of my books that I have and the ones forthcoming, all of them deal with topics that you could say are possibly dry or not for children, but I think that these are big ideas that impact their lives. And once they understand that and you can connect with them, I think that you're helping them become the thinkers and the leaders to work on these big ideas and as they grow up. So I really love jumping into how they can inspire us and how they just understand so much more that you could even ever imagine at that young age.
And they're curious anyway. So when you're turning on a light or when they lose power, those are things that they can,
Yeah.
relate to the book as well, and they can then ask more questions. So yeah, that's
Yes.
really neat. So we talked a little bit about the path to the idea, but what was iFuel's path to publication? Like, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I feel has kind of an interesting story. So as I mentioned, I'd always had this idea in my head. I wanted to write about this industry, but it's complicated. I mean, it really is. And even the back matter, I had to edit down to make it more simplified. And so I did Vivian Kirkfield's 50 Precious Words contest, which is very common for picture book writers, but anyone can do it. It still takes place every year. And I was inspired to say, hey, maybe this is the angle I need. I need to go really, really sparse text to help me get it so simple. And when I did that, so the very first draft of this book was 50 words created for that
Wow.
contest, and it got an honorable mention as, cool nonfiction idea. And that kind of gave me I didn't have an agent yet or anything at that point. And so it kind of gave me some fuel to keep going with this idea. And so I kept working on it with my critique group, which is all SCBWI Carolinas people. And it eventually evolved. And then from there, I had a really good manuscript. I ended up winning a mentorship program with someone who we worked specifically on this. And at that time, it did not have all the alternative energy stuff at the end. It kind of just focused on the fact that fuel is going, and as it gets used, it eventually is going to run out. So it was kind of this idea that you're going and you're not going to be here forever, but I'm trying to get you and the people around you what they need, even though it might be sacrificing myself. So that's kind of how it was. And so what happened was I went to an SCBWI conference, not through SCBWI Carolinas, but through Ohio North, had this really cool conference. And one thing I love about SCBWI is you can do these virtual
Right.
conferences in other regions. And this was the coolest conference called the Retreat, like retreat, as in like an ice cream cone. And it was 3 Saturdays, and you first got paired. So you send a manuscript in advance, first got paired with a published author who is like your mentor. They give you one round of revisions on your story. You had a week to fix it. The next week, you had a meeting with a editor that your group was paired with. So I was with all kind of STEM manuscripts. And so through this conference, you meet with the editor, and then there's another time with the editor. And so through that, I actually for that was like, I'm going to bring this other manuscript. And so that's how I wrote I Ship, which ended up being the first book published, but I wrote I Fuel first. And so my editor, Carol Hinz at Learner, really liked I Ship, and we made some changes to that. And I ended up selling these together as a 2-book deal, but they wanted I Ship to come out first. So it was just one of those interesting things that happened. But the voice from I Fuel led to me writing the unique angle of I Ship, which is the angle kind of being from the perspective of the object itself was what she liked and how it made it different from the cascade of vehicle books you have out there. So it just, it's one of those things like take every opportunity, try things, and things will kind of fall into place. So even though this is my second book, it's very dear to my heart because it's the first one that kind of got it all going.
all this information, how did you distill this topic for young readers?
So, like I mentioned, the 50 Precious Words content
Mhm.
really helped me to get a start on, okay, let's make this really simple. Use plainer language and kind of sparse and go through it. And so as I did that, I realized I can take these complex ideas, speak of them simply, and just kind of, you're laying out the facts. This is where it came from. This is what it does now. This is things that it could do in the future. These are things that are evolving, and leave it in this way that it's almost not a call to action necessarily, but like, you have all the pieces now. What do you make of this puzzle, readers? What can you do to change things? Because about 80% of the world's energy as of 2023 comes from oil or other fossil fuels. So because of that, I mean, it's not going to go away completely, right? That's not going to happen. But we can be mindful about not using too much and be careful about cleanup and things that are related, like plastics. And so, in the first author visit I just did yesterday, actually, it was interesting to see these kids. I think we had like ages 4 to 7 that were there, and just talking with them about ideas for kind of things that can make the earth happy, things that can make the earth sad. What are some small changes we can make in our life where they, as children, can make a difference? I think getting on a child's level can just really, like you mentioned, ignite those light bulbs and get the wheels turning for them to then, when they go to the gas station with their parents, think about that.
Mhm.
When they are, leaving the house, oh, mom, can we turn off the light? Things like that. So I love making kids aware of the things going on in the lives around them.
Conversations that it could spark and the interest that it's good that's going to bloom from that is really neat.
Thank you.
What are you working on next? Like what's coming up in the future for
Yeah,
you?
so this book series with Learner turned into being, it's currently 4 books. So the titles of the other 2 aren't announced. But it's 2 more vehicle books.
Mhm.
So they're more similar to I Ship than I Fuel. But I mean, I Fuel is vehicle adjacent.
Yeah.
They have marked it as a vehicle kind of book category still, because it's fueling the things that go. So those have been really fun, to work with Jam Dong again. She's an incredible illustrator. And then I also have a forthcoming book that is announced, with Canop Books for young readers, and that is called The Farm Next Door. And it is fiction, but it's still informational fiction like these. And it is about a farmer who is very solitary. And when her barn gets destroyed by a really bad storm, she realizes she needs to rely on help from her neighbors and her customers, really, and that they're more than just her customers, they're her friends, and that community can help her to rebuild what she needs to keep her business going. And that has a little touch of informational fiction, how it deals with local economies. So how her business is kind of entwined in all these other businesses in town, and you can kind of see the money flowing through kind of in the background of the story. And the back matter talks about that, like, what is a local economy? How are you part of your local economy? What can you do? What are different types of ways that you are transacting? And so, as authors in particular, we think about that a lot because we love to support local bookstores, right? And we always talk about that. And so, that's going to be a fun one to kind of work on that when you're doing a book talk about that book. So, I'm really looking forward to that. And that's going to be illustrated by Charles Santoso, and that will be coming out in 2026 summer. Sorry, getting too
There
many
you go.
years
Thank
ahead
you.
on
Okay.
these books, which is all good news. So
That is so exciting. Oh, I can't wait for that one to come out. All right. So how can we all stay up to date with you? Your latest releases, events, all those kinds of things. How do we keep up with you on social media?
yes, so social media is a lot these days. There's so many places, so I am on all of them, all the main ones. But I'm mostly post things on Instagram, and I am at KR Schmitt Writes, as in Rites, for all the platforms. But I probably post the most on Instagram and some on Facebook, just because picture books are a visual medium. So it's really nice to share little tidbits of that. And then my website has my teacher guides are downloadable on there, and all the links to buy and lots of more information about me is on my website too, which is www.kellyrriceschmitt, which is with two T's, no D, .com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Kelly.
Thank
And
you for
again,
having me.
congratulations again on the release of iFuel as well as the awards. And we look forward to following your writing journey as you move forward.
Thank you so much. I am so blessed to be a part of the SCBWI Carolinas community and to know you and everyone else in it. So it's just a joy to be
Well,
able to be here today.
thanks so much.